record this session just so that the recording will be available for you after on. So the first couple slides as far as the trends were a little bit more background. The slides will also be available for download. So no worries there as well. If you are not able to catch everything or you want to review later on, we will be able to provide that to you. So thank you for that. If anyone else is having issues, please don't hesitate to post in the questions or chat pane. Okay, so based off of the trends that I explained and the high market potential that e-commerce and retail has in the region, Google is focusing on e-commerce. And the main problems that are trying to be solved, particularly in this region, is that more users, more consumers are accessing retailers' brands online, and especially in this region, leveraging mobile devices. So what we've seen when we're working with organizations here in the region and working with Google directly is that the mobile penetration is much higher in this area than in other regions compared to the population, with the majority of users accessing via a mobile device or a tablet. And that's because the MENA consumer is getting very tech savvy and starting to use a lot more touch points to engage with the brand. So Google recognized this as a global trend, and particularly in the last year and a half, they revamped their e-commerce tracking capabilities so that it can be not only more competitive with other analytics platforms and software, but really better represent how users are engaging online and what types of things they're doing on their websites or on retailers' websites to actually find the products that they want to purchase. So it's a big focus for Google, and with enhanced e-commerce out of beta fully now, as of earlier this year, it's being rolled out to all retailers. Okay, so the next part of the agenda, we're going to talk about enhanced e-commerce, the benefits. I'll be showing some screenshots of the different reports and capabilities that are available and some of the business questions that can be answered. They're somewhat generic slides, if you will, with a few specific examples, because the section after that is going to be specific screenshots from our past engagements and some customers that we work with, without revealing who they are, of course, to be a little bit more specific on how this can be used and the actionability there. So what we always start with is asking meaningful, actionable questions from your data. And with enhanced e-commerce, these are some of the questions that can be answered now, where users are having trouble with your checkout process or overall in the shopping behavior funnel, where they're dropping off, the campaigns that you're using to get users into your shopping funnel, which one's most effective, as well as product placement. So in general, enhanced e-commerce is different than traditional e-commerce tracking with Google Analytics because it shows or is designed to convey the pre-transaction activity or pre-purchase activity that users might engage with, where the classic way or the old way that Google had an e-commerce tracking available was only what was purchased and how much and what products. This is an attempt to answer what led up to that purchase, what activities and what aspects of the website and campaigns actually drive users through the shopping funnel, or where do they get stuck and abandoned, so that you can have that analysis and act on those different types of situations. So as far as deep user insights, what I'm showing here on the slide is previously with Google Analytics, as I mentioned before, e-commerce was only capturing the purchased products or the purchase activity. So in order to see any kind of funnel or how users progress through your website or the checkout, would be using goal flows, which were very clunky, buggy, and also created almost, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, much before the enhancements to just internet and technology now with modern websites. So the new shopping behavior funnels and checkout funnels are shown here on the right, which is a lot more visually easy to understand and split up in a way to show how users are progressing and where they're dropping off a little bit more clearly. With Google Analytics Standard, the free product, you actually have access to 2 funnels: the shopping behavior, which is a little bit high level, just how users are progressing through your site, and then also the checkout behavior, specifically how they're going through your checkout process from login to shipping to billing, etc. The screenshot shown here can help answer some common questions like, where are the bottlenecks in my shopping experience? So you can see users as they progress from one stage to the next, how many are dropping out, and then automatically see the abandonment rate at any particular stage. You can drill this down a little bit deeper, which I'll show in the next couple slides, to see not just in aggregate, all sessions, all users, how they're going through your funnel, but drill down into specifics depending on what kind of business questions you're trying to answer. The question I have shown here as an example is how many people added a specific brand to their cart but did not purchase. So it's really specific, but it's good for the brand marketers or the specific merchandising team members that you might have to answer those kind of questions and really act on it. So to show an example of this, or below the funnel, is the drill down that I was mentioning before. So what you can do with this report is not only see an aggregate users as they go from step to step and stage to stage, or where they're dropping out, but also specific dimensions or ways they're accessing the site and how they're progressing through that way. So in this particular example, we're showing the different devices that people may be using to actually go through the website, so desktop, tablet, or mobile. And what we can see here is, though percentage-wise more users start the checkout process on mobile, there's a lot less that actually complete the purchase. So 7% actually enter the checkout funnel, but less than 1% actually complete the checkout flow. So the checkout process on mobile might be a little bit clunky here. So one quick question that came in. Questions for the QA part, where can you? Okay, so we'll handle that question, I guess, in the question time at the end. Thank you for posting that there and saying let's talk about it later. It's an industry question, so we can tackle that a little bit later on. Essentially, just to come back to the checkout funnel and the shopping behavior, this is how you can begin to see how where users are actually dropping off or how far they're getting in your shopping behavior according to a different dimension. So this drop down here, it doesn't only have to be device category, it can be by region, or it can be by campaign, or even custom dimensions that you might be tracking specifically for your site. You can see how people engage in your shopping funnel according to that. One thing that I wanted to include in here that's not specifically enhanced e-commerce, but still something very valuable to think about implementing, is just event tracking. And this allows you to see what else are users doing on your site beyond just going through your checkout funnel or your checkout flow or shopping flow, if you will, but other stuff that might be on the site that impacts ultimate purchase. So again, thinking about that pre-purchase activity that might be driving more revenue, this is one way that you can potentially do that. So the screenshot I show here is from a separate customer that we have that implemented event tracking, which is essentially tracking user interactions on the site. So different clicks on different actions or what they're engaging with, so that we can see how that ultimately impacts performance or purchase and transactions. So you can see here there's things like coupon requests or printing coupons or registering for an account, various different things that they and we help them implement with a very clean and standardized approach, so that we can see, okay, some of these actions are actually driving more revenue, or these specific brands have a lot of coupon requests. So your marketing and your campaigns might be affected based off of this understanding of how users are engaging with different elements on your site. And just a reminder, the copy of the presentation, the copy of the presentation will be provided to everyone, as well as a recording of this presentation. So good question that just came in. And as far as which tab will give the funnel information in Google Analytics. I think that's a question that just came in here. In Google Analytics and under e-commerce, there's an enhanced e-commerce shopping behavior report. That's where you can see this funnel here on the right. And if you just scroll down a little bit, this is where you can see the table view for different dimensions that might be coming in. So that was a question that came in, is where to actually find this funnel information in this drill down here. It's in the same shopping behavior funnel report, just beneath the actual funnel itself. It's a good question. Okay, so the next part of enhanced e-commerce that we want to share is the product performance reports and analysis. So in this report, again, just to illustrate the pre-purchase activity questions that can be answered now, with enhanced e-commerce, you can see not only the products that are purchased like in classic analytics, but also how many times were they seen in a list, in a product list, or how many times were they viewed just that detail page versus how many times were they added to cart or abandoned. And then there's automatic metrics that are calculated, such as cart to detail. So how many times was this product or these products seen on the details pages versus added to cart? What's the percentage? Or what's the percentage of detail pages to actual purchases? So you can begin to understand which products are most popular, converting the best, or which detail pages might be most effective or need some work, some updates to provide either more description, add some ratings and reviews, or other options there. Now, the additional opportunity here is also you can track product category or product brand with enhanced e-commerce as just a standard dimension. So instead of only looking at the product name or the brand, you can see if you have different categorizations of your products, then you can see that according to these metrics here and understand the pre-purchase activity per product category. The thing with product category is you can also have a up to 5-level hierarchy. So if you have different levels of categorization for your products, you can add that into Google Analytics as well, so that you can see at the highest level, the category that's driving the most conversions or getting the most engagement, or drill down depending on how your site architecture works or your product descriptions work as well. One other quick question that came in, does product detail views require additional tagging tracking codes? How does GA know if the product description has been viewed? Excellent question. A little bit about how product detail pages are actually tracked. They do require a specific note or attribute on those pages that identify that particular page as a detail page. So with enhanced e-commerce, we're not going to talk about the technical implementation or code required on various sections of the site, but almost all of these additional or new metrics do require some separate attribute to identify, excuse me, that it is either, this product was seen as an impression on a list page, or it was viewed as a detail page itself. So it does require a little bit additional code. If you're using Google Tag Manager, it's just an additional attribute in the data layer, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the value with Google Tag Manager. If you're using just Google Analytics directly on the site, you would need to add in a detail attribute as well. It's in the Google support documentation, and I'm happy to follow up after the webinar and send more information if needed. So good question. Add to cart, remove from cart, those actions as well, they'll not only require event tracking to track every time someone clicks on that, but also an additional attribute within that click to say this was an add to cart versus remove from cart as well. Okay, one additional thing, this again, I sprinkled in some non-enhanced e-commerce specific reports, but relevant reports for retailers or online e-commerce stores. So one example of that is something we did with a recent or a local customer here is to track out of stock product views. So essentially the way this works is for a customer, they have hundreds of thousands of SKUs and products displayed on their site, and oftentimes some products would run out of stock but still be displayed on site for users to see. And what we wanted to do is understand the impact out of stock products had on overall user experience. And what we began to do is track every time a product was seen that was out of stock, we would track it as a custom metric. And what we're able to do is compare that to total product detail views and day over day see changes in inventory. So if at any point one of their popular brands or products ran out of stock, we would immediately send an alert of this report to the inventory team to either restock, or if it was a manufacturer's issue, we would at least pause campaigns that might be driving users to those specific product detail pages to just send them to the category pages instead. Since sending users to a detail page of a product that's out of stock is not only poor experience, it's just will drive up your bounce rates and exit rates and ultimately be wasted investment or ad spend. So by tracking anytime a product was seen out of stock, we can immediately act or act in a very short time frame. And then ultimately later on remarket to those users when a product is restocked. We can build a segment to say, group all users that saw this particular brand when it was out of stock, now that it's in stock, and remarkets them that messaging that we have the product back, or there's other options that can be taken advantage of. Let's see, we have another question that just came in. How to check effectiveness of promotions, cost versus benefit analysis, frequency of promotions to be done. So we have a slide coming up about internal promotions and how enhanced e-commerce tracks those, as well as a little bit about off-site campaign tracking as well. So hopefully we'll get to that, and if not, we can discuss in the questions section at the end of the presentation. All right, the next section about enhanced e-commerce is optimizing merchandising. So how your products are actually displayed or presented on your website. So Google took a stab at this with enhanced e-commerce by providing new tracking of product lists, or essentially ways that products can be displayed on site in different sections or different groups that have multiple products shown. So by tracking product impressions, or how many times products are seen within different lists, you can begin to understand where products may belong or which different lists are most effective at driving conversion. So understanding which products are getting the most exposure, which ones are eventually getting clicked on what list and in what location, that's the power behind these product list reports and product impressions. Now, what we've done, and I actually don't have any link on here, but it is live. What we've done is take this a step further with all of our customers using enhanced e-commerce to implement scroll-based impression tracking, because the way product impressions and product list tracking is implemented now is any product that is loaded would receive an impression out of the box once implemented. What we did is took that a step further to say only send an impression for products that are in the viewable screen at the time the page is loaded, and then as users scroll, new products will be visible. Send those as impressions as the users are scrolling. So it's a little bit more true way to measure product impressions and therefore get a more accurate click-through rate, because you'll see only when it was viewable how many times was a product actually clicked on. The insights from this is to understand, okay, users might be looking for products that are often below the fold and clicking on those, so maybe we need to reorganize how we're displaying our different products. This screenshot here is just an example of the product list performance report. So you can see how many times different lists were seen versus products were actually clicked on those different lists and the click-through rate. So this helps you understand which product lists or groupings of products are most effective at actually driving conversion or engagement. One question that came in about remarketing for out of stock. I'm going to circle back on this question here at the end since we're moved on from that point, but definitely we'll come back to that as well, how to remarket for out of stock products. Okay, speaking of remarketing, actually that's the next section here is about closing the loop. So you have all these insights and you can do all this analysis, but let's take it a step further and actually drive some action from that. So with enhanced e-commerce and the funnel visualizations, you can actually easily create segments of different users by simply clicking on any stage that a user or that your shopping funnel contains, or abandonments. By clicking on any one of those sections of this report, you can automatically create an e-commerce segment here so that you can either just analyze people that made it to a certain stage and maybe look at other reports around that segment, or even import it into Google AdWords for remarketing. So I'm sure many of you know that are on this webinar here that Google Analytics and Google AdWords auto-integrate because it's all Google. And with that integration comes the capability of passing Google Analytics created segments or groups of users and sessions over to AdWords to send specific remarketing and targeted advertisements. So some examples, these are very high-level examples, but users who add to cart but do not buy. So to the previous slide here, this might be creating a segment where users made it to the add to cart phase, or they actually added to cart, but they abandoned. So you would click on that abandoned on add to cart, create a segment, and then immediately pass that over to Google AdWords, and then you can re-engage those abandoned users. Or another example could be users who bought a certain threshold, we'll say $100 here in the past month. You might consider those your more valued customers or higher revenue generating customers. So maybe they're looking more for the luxury products or certain types of tiered products versus those users who don't purchase quite as much are looking for the low tier products, perhaps. Or users who looked at a specific category of products or brand of products and did not purchase, showing them similar products that way as well. So these are just high-level examples. It really depends on your business, your product catalog, and how you want to remarket. But all of this is capabilities with enhanced e-commerce that were not available before. One thing that is relatively new to the region and starting to roll out is dynamic remarketing, which essentially is a way to automatically remarket certain products to users as they go off to other websites on the internet based off of their activity on site. So essentially you could set up a product feed from your catalog to Google and remarket specific products instead of just advertisements that are static. This is more dynamic depending on what they did and what they engaged with. With enhanced e-commerce and Google Analytics, you can set up the tracking required to pass over to Google Analytics about specific products that are seen, the value, and what types of pages users are looking at, so that a very tailored advertisement can be delivered to them for re-engagement. And what we've seen with these particular dynamic remarketing campaigns and using Google Analytics to power them is dramatically lower cost per acquisition, or just cost for these types of ads, because they're so very relevant to the user, but also a lot of engagement. And for one customer recently, we analyzed and noticed that dynamic remarketing allowed for the middle of the funnel as far as attribution to dramatically spike, because they were re-engaging users when they would ultimately be looking at competitor websites. So they would come to the site, look at a couple products, leave to look at their competitor websites, but with dynamic remarketing following them on other places on the internet, conversion dramatically shot through the roof for them using dynamic remarketing. So this is rolling out here in the MENA region. So if you're not aware of this yet, I would recommend contacting your Google rep or your AdWords specialist in-house to investigate rolling this out, and consider using enhanced e-commerce and GA to power this capability. So one thing that I wanted to highlight, as some of you may be experiencing this, is the holiday code freeze and what can you do. So a lot of the things I talked about before this slide was all implementing enhanced e-commerce and the reports you can get. If you don't have enhanced e-commerce implemented already, there is a lot of code that is required on site, whether it's with Google Tag Manager and the data layer or directly with Google Analytics. So if now is a challenging time to get some dev resources, or you're coming up to a code freeze, I wanted to highlight some other ways that you can potentially be looking at your data, or other enhancements you can do that don't require code changes specifically, just for those that might be experiencing this as we come down to the end of the year. So one way is obviously looking at channels or campaigns that are bringing users to your site. As far as this report, most of you probably have this if you're using Google Analytics and in your e-commerce retailer. This is just a standard report to see channel groupings as they're bringing users in, so the acquisitional metrics, how they're engaging users with behavioral metrics, and then ultimately how they're converting different users. To start, this is where we always look at first. If you don't have this report populating, this is where you want to begin. Specifically getting the conversion tracking, which is still code, but before you jump into enhanced e-commerce and all the enhanced capabilities, starting with just getting revenue and transactions tracked is a good place because it powers all of the reports in Google Analytics. Beyond this though, if you have e-commerce in place and you are in a code freeze or dev resources are tight, focusing on how to clean up your channel groupings could be helpful to provide better analysis. So one example is maybe splitting up paid search between branded paid search with your brand names or terms included with unbranded or unknown keywords or just other non-branded paid search included as well. Or creating new channel groupings for retargeting efforts or affiliate marketing and other channels that you might be using that you want to split up as its own channel. So this is one way to begin to start measuring value and get a little bit deeper into what acquisitional channels are working for you. Quick question, I guess I do need to take a pause and reverse. Holiday code freeze, what does that mean is the question that came through. What I meant by that is for some organizations, maybe particularly in the US or European markets, but it could, we've experienced it here in MENA as well, is when the development teams or IT puts a hold on coding anything or adding new capabilities to websites at the end of the year to account for the increase in volume or traffic that might be coming to the site. So essentially it's when the development and IT teams say we're not adding in any new tracking capabilities or any new code, so you have to wait a couple weeks or a month or after the holiday season to actually continue implementing or add in new tracking capabilities. So the point of this section is all to talk about how to review analytics without always requiring code changes. So things that are done off-site, like channel performance or updating your campaigns. A couple other questions came in. These are great questions. They're all very similar. It's about how to update channel groupings. So I don't actually have a slide on how to update the channel groupings, but essentially it's in your admin settings in Google Analytics. If you go to your admin panel and then under the view settings on the far right, you'll have a couple options to either create new channel groupings or how you identify different campaigns and different channels that might be driving users to your site, or modify the default channel grouping, which is the one that's automatically set to include new channels or split channels. And the way you do that is once you click into that, you'll see some logic for how these are defined. So if you're tracking with UTM Google Analytics parameters all of your campaigns, which again we don't talk about in this particular webinar, you'll be able to modify how the groupings will be configured. So for example, if you have UTM_medium parameter set as affiliate for your affiliate channel or campaigns, you'll be able to set up a new channel grouping or add a new channel saying if the medium equals affiliate, make it the affiliate channel grouping. So I'd recommend looking in the admin panel under the view settings to see how you're currently grouping your channels and how to modify those settings as well. What we like to do is take this even a step further. So again, without making any code changes on site, you can still add in another layer of measurement, and that is with return on advertising spend or just return. So I'm going to walk through this example report here to show how right now with Google Analytics, if you have it integrated with Google AdWords, you automatically will be able to see impressions, clicks, cost, essentially pre-session activity or pre-session data in Google Analytics pulled automatically from Google AdWords. Now, for non-Google owned channels, you can still pull in this pre-session data using the data import API or the data import capabilities. So for example, if you're running advertisements on Facebook, in Google Analytics, the automatically what you would see if you're tagging it properly, the campaigns, is just how many sessions might be coming from Facebook, and if you have revenue tracked, how much revenue can be attributed to Facebook. What we like to do is take that a step further and actually pull in the impressions, clicks, and cost data, particularly the cost or the spend data on different advertising channels, so that we can unlock new metrics such as return per click or return on advertising spend, ROAS. Essentially, how the return metrics work is once you pull in the cost or spend data from these non-Google owned channels using the data import API or data import capability, combining cost data with the revenue that you're tracking, which isn't shown here, but it is included, you'll unlock the calculated metric ROAS, which takes how much revenue a certain channel is bringing compared to how much it cost or the spend, and to give you the percentage or the value of that channel. Now, the beauty with this, in this particular example I'll show, is that Google AdWords might, on the surface look like the best channel because it's bringing in the most sessions, it probably has the highest revenue, but the cost is a little bit higher. Where Facebook, not bringing in as many sessions, and the cost is really low, but if you look at ROAS, the value, for every dollar you put in, $2.5 come out. So 250% return for the investment going into Facebook versus 120%. Still positive for AdWords, but just not as much of an impact as Facebook. So the action that might come out of this is maybe pump a little bit more spend or investment in Facebook, see if you can maintain a high return, but ultimately drive more revenue and drive up your bottom line, your margin. So really powerful once you get in or integrate your non-Google owned channel data, such as impressions, clicks, and cost, into GA. The way to do this, either using the data import capabilities in GA, again within the admin settings under the property, or we actually built a tool, again back to our R&D arm of the company, that automates the process of integration between Bing, Facebook, and other channels into Google Analytics. So simply, we would create an account in Analyzely, say which Google Analytics property you want to send data to, and then where you want to grab the data from, whether it's Facebook or other channels, and then the interval of how often you want to process this. So other customers in the region we're working with have this integration with Facebook, Criteo, Vizuri, Bing, and other platforms, depending on where they're advertising, so that we can get this cost data in GA and the ROAS unlocked for that additional analysis. Again, no code changes required on site. This all happens within the Google Analytics interface and these other advertising platforms as well. If there's any additional questions about how to build this or integrate the different channels, I recommend dropping me a note, which I'll have my contact information a little bit later on, or just going to analyze.ly and seeing the process there. You can create a free trial account as well to start the integration, assuming you have the tracking in place for your channels. So we have about 15 to 20 minutes left. So I think I'm going to go a little bit quicker on just other capabilities because I really want to get to the use cases. So one other thing I recommend any organization looking at, especially if dev resources are tight, is just multi-channel funnels and attribution. So essentially there's reports in Google Analytics. Once you have conversions tracked or revenue, you can see how different channels impact buyers or buying behavior. That isn't just last click. So looking at which channels might be bringing users into the site first versus the actual closers. And this might help you understand how to reallocate your budget so that display or paid search might not be driving the most last click or final registrations or final purchases, but it might be really good at bringing people in initially, so the investments should stay there and some of the messaging might be affected. And by using the attribution reports, you can begin to understand which channels deserve what type of credit, whether if you're only looking at which ones are driving the final purchase, last interaction or last click would be the model you want to use, versus which ones are actually bringing users in and introducing the site and introducing your products, first interaction attribution model might be more effective. Essentially, by comparing these different models together, you can see which channels not only drive users to purchase at the end of their buying decision, but also get them into your funnel or help them along the way to re-encourage them to come back and ultimately purchase. As we've seen, and especially in the MENA region, consumers take multiple touch points or do a lot of different research before they commit to buying something. So they'll come back to your site a couple times in different methods, different ways. So capitalizing on that is the whole point of the attribution and multi-channel funnel reports. Just wanted to throw in here a case study of a local customer that we're working with, Mumzworld, and how through enhanced e-commerce and attribution modeling and multi-channel funnels, as well as some of the customer reports that I described before, we were able to help them over the last year increase in multiple ways. So just as kind of again, proof that what I'm saying actually works, all the analysis and all the implementation and remarketing, etc., can help you get to this level of success or growth, if you will, within your organization. And they've implemented cost data from their different channels, and what we found is that there's a 300% return on advertising spend across their top 3 paid channels, which is the focus there is to get a higher return for every $1 in, $3 out, kind of 3% or 300% return on advertising spend. Okay, so to jump in and quickly go through some how-to or some common questions that we were able to answer with enhanced e-commerce, we'll go over this section here and then get into implementation and best practice. So I'm going to go through this in about 10 minutes, so leave maybe 5 minutes for questions at the end. We always recommend when deploying enhanced e-commerce or really any Google Analytics is to use Google Tag Manager with the new Universal Analytics standard. So Universal Analytics is the same as Google Analytics, it's just the upgraded version, and it's the only place that enhanced e-commerce tracking and data import capabilities are available. So it's worth confirming that if your organization is still using classic Google Analytics, the old syntax, to make sure you can upgrade to Universal Analytics. And we would recommend using Google Tag Manager because it helps optimize the speed for future tracking. Once you add Google Tag Manager, which is essentially just a little bit of code snippet, you'll be able to standardize tracking across different platforms, different websites, and Google Analytics can be deployed through Google Tag Manager. It's the deployment mechanism. When you're setting up checkout funnels, it's important to note that there will be some admin settings that you will need to configure under the view. So if you go to admin settings under the view, this is where not only can you look at channel groupings, but also your e-commerce settings to make sure that you can label how you want your checkout flow to work. So there's some code that's required on site to say this is checkout step 1, checkout step 2, but in the UI, you actually put words to those steps. So you can name, if you have step 1 as your login, you would say begin checkout login, you would actually name that, and then whether you have shipping, payment, order, etc. If you have a one-page checkout, you would only have one step here, or you could potentially split that one-page checkout into multiple steps depending on where users click. So once they click on a payment method on that one-page checkout, you can track it as an event and then set it up here as a step 2. That's a little bit more advanced, but it's certainly a capability. So I wanted to show a couple examples of how other customers have used this data before. So one example here, it's very quick. We noticed with one of our other retailers, this is actually a US-based company, they had a step 2 after login that was gathering more user information or more data about their user to allow them to go through the rest of the process. We noticed the step 2 was not really valuable based off of this visualization since most people were skipping it since they were already logged in or we already obtained that data earlier on, or abandoning on that step. Where from shipping to billing and to review and submit, there was a lot lower abandonment rate. Users were going through pretty easily. So these steps were good to continue along, but this step just seemed a little out of place. So by removing this, it was a lot easier for users to flow through the checkout funnel, and we would just obtain their specific information earlier on in the funnel or earlier on in their shopping behavior to get that information out of the way and when they're ready to buy, they can just zoom through. Talked a little bit about segmentation and remarketing, so I think I'll skip this slide. It'll be in the download available for you. It's just how to set up remarketing and some of the capabilities there once you create a segment. With enhanced e-commerce, there's also an ability to track internal promotions or what banners and discounts that you might be putting on your site, on your homepage, or actually promoting are actually driving the most engagement and ultimately purchase. So there's separate tracking and separate reports that can provide this information for the promotions that are getting the most visibility or getting the most clicks, and then ultimately which ones are driving the most revenue. And what you can use this for is actually pass it on to either remarketing if there was a user that saw a promotion, clicked on it, but did not purchase, showing them a similar or the same promotion off on a different website or on the internet using remarketing, as well as A/B testing different types of content, different types of promotions that you have to see if it also drives higher engagement, higher purchase as well. So an example of segmentation that we've performed for another customer is actually splitting the funnel by just showing mobile and tablet traffic specifically or desktop traffic, since their mobile experience was slightly different than their desktop experience as far as the shopping behavior and the checkout funnels go. So what we notice is that mobile has less activity from the shopping behavior side, so less product views, add to carts, but ultimately what's not shown here is the checkout flow was a lot higher. Users were abandoning a lot less on mobile when going through the checkout flow. It was a lot more simple, lots of one clicks, where the desktop they tried to garner more information, it was spread out and a little bit more confusing. So both platforms, using this segmentation and looking at the funnel separately, we were able to learn about the other. So we simplified the mobile product detail pages and product lists, looking at how desktop was performing, but then also the checkout flow on desktop we simplified based off of how the mobile was set up. So these different funnels segmented this way can give us that kind of insight or idea on how different platforms might be performing. I want to show just a quick screenshot of where to find the data import section or capabilities. So under the admin section, under data import, this is where you can either set up a manual data import one time, and I show in here how a simple CSV file can be configured or built to upload into Google Analytics. The keynote here is that you do need at least one key or one data attribute tracked in Google Analytics first to append additional data around it, additional metrics or dimensions. So in this case, product SKU is being tracked in Google Analytics already as purchase SKUs or add to, these SKUs were added to cart, etc. But then you can import directly brand name, product name, and other attributes around your products using the data import capability. I mentioned before, Analyzely is a tool to bring in cost data or spend data from other non-Google owned channels. It's also, since it's leveraging the data import capabilities, a way to import additional non-cost data such as product, user, campaign data that you might have in other systems into Google Analytics as well. Again, without recoding the site, you can use a data import capability and Analyzely to automate that process. So the data import capability is available for anyone to use on a manual basis. Analyzely takes that a step further and actually can automate it so that you can import on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis your new product catalog or different information about your site and users that live in other places beyond just your website or in GA. A quick example of a report that we created using the data import capabilities in Analyzely for a different retailer. We actually began to import product size and color around product SKUs, and we were able to then see which size color combinations drove the most revenue from paid or organic search. So it's a very specific segmented report, but our customer was curious on how different sizes and colors are performing according to just search, organic and paid. So we were able to create this report and show this example here of specific product attributes and how they're converting according to different channels. All right, so I kind of breezed through that very quickly. We have about 5 minutes till the top of the hour, so I'm going to go even quicker through the implementation best practices. There's only a couple slides, and then I'll leave some time for questions, hopefully. Our best practices, something that we do for all of our customers, is starting with a plan. Gathering requirements, understanding what type of business questions we need to answer first and foremost starts first. Technically, from an implementation standpoint, we always recommend using a tag management system, such as Google Tag Manager, which is free, and the data layer, which essentially is a way to collect information in one spot on the source code, just in one section, so that Google Tag Manager can quickly read out of that section of the site or that data layer, that information bucket, and pass it to Google Analytics. I talked a lot about analyzing the data import capabilities, really, really powerful and really easy to add in more information to G8 without technical um, uh, requirements, if you will, or dependencies. And then putting together a rollout schedule and testing. These are just best practices to ensure really quality data. We typically split up our engagements with different customers in different stages. I recommend any organization to follow these high-level steps, where stage one is all about understanding what you're trying to solve, the business questions, prioritizing requirements. So for enhanced e-commerce, you do not need to implement all of it all at once for it to work. Again, starting in chunks with just the revenue, the transactions first, then maybe just the checkout funnel, and then just the shopping behavior funnel, even before you go to product impressions or product lists. Prioritizing the needs based on the business questions, that's important. And building the architecture and technical rollout, that's how we describe stage one. Where stage two is all about rolling it out, testing, quality, and assurance and validation. And then step three is actually using the data and leveraging it and taking things like this webinar back to your team so that they can actually begin using and implementing some things with the insights that come out of the data. Here's a screenshot of just an example rollout plan that we have. Again, there's owners, so there's some accountability, a timeline for when things should be completed, and then really clear milestones and stages or phases so that you can split up the work and not try and tackle it all at once, but really breaking it out into chunks. We always like to build a project portal or central repository of all information like the project plan, the business questions, the audit and review, the implementation guide, trainings, etc. And we typically do this in a Google site because it's also free and it's one place to build essentially a mini site or a mini portal with all the information that you might have around your implementation, around Google Analytics, and shared resources. So it's kind of one place to aggregate all of your project deliverables in one section and share it with your team. Talked about Tag Inspector a little bit earlier. This is essentially a way to help validate and test implementation of Google Analytics and enhanced e-commerce. There's two ways you can use Tag Inspector: is either scanning your site. We actually send out a crawler and it brings back information around where Google Analytics is present or where it's missing, and then also a tag itself that you can deploy through Google Tag Manager or put on site to see how the data is being captured and what attributes are actually being passed. So I highly recommend Tag Inspector, checking it out. It's a free product as well, and there's information on our site about how to use it for validation. All right, so to close, wanted to give a takeaway here on how to get started, different steps. There's our project process guide on our website. Obviously, I think this link might be clickable for the attendees on call right now. If not, I can send it to you as a follow-up if you're interested in our process guide. It really just expands on these steps to actually rolling out enhanced e-commerce. Since it is potentially a big undertaking, there's a lot of steps that we recommend that have been successful for us working with organizations in the past. And they're listed out here, and in the document they're spelled out a little bit more and gives you some templates and ways to actually get this rolled out in your organization. So with that, I want to close. I apologize for not giving a lot of time for questions now, since we're about out of time, but I'll stay on for 5 or 10 more minutes if anyone else has any questions. Of course, I encourage you to sign up and join our upcoming webinars, and if you're in Dubai, our live seminar next week that we'll be doing at the Google Tech Hub Astra Labs. For additional questions, feel free to email me or Skype me. Happy to continue on. So there is one question that I want to follow up on, which is where can you obtain industry standards from? So it depends on what you're looking for as far as the industry standards go. If you're looking for just general statistics and trends, in this presentation, I provide a couple of sources of where that information is from. As far as best practices for rolling out, Google has a lot of support documentation on their website, but it's very generic. What we always like to recommend is joining these types of webinars or looking at resources or other organizations that have fully implemented this. Again, our guide here is somewhat of a standardization or standard form that we've experienced working with more than 100 retailers now implementing this stuff. So I recommend checking that out for more of a standard approach. Is the webinar recorded? Yes, for the most part, the recording is happening right now. So that'll be provided to you as well as the slides as a follow-up. Another question that came in is, please share the best way to use Google Analytics for starters. Well, there is this online. If you search for Digital Analytics Academy by Justin Catroni, and I can put that in the chat pane here in a minute. That's a really good place for to start. It gives you a high level of how to think about digital analytics and how to start using Google Analytics if you've never used it before. So I highly recommend that. As well as shameless plug, our blog and our website, infotrustllc.com. We have a lot of good resources as well. But I think the Digital Analytics Academy by Justin Catroni, he's a Googler, I think is a good place to start there. All right, is there any other questions? I'll be hanging around for a few more minutes, so if anyone has any questions, let me know. Again, our upcoming webinars are a little bit more advanced in November and in December for integrating marketing data. It's almost a deep dive into Analyze.ly's capabilities and ways to leverage that even further. And the data-driven marketing is taking your analysis to the next level, looking beyond last click and multi-channel funnels and even deeper analysis that is possible with GA and expanding on that. I guess I'll stick around and answer a couple more questions, but for those that need to drop off, thank you so much for attending. I hope this was informative and helpful. Feel free again to reach out to me if you have additional questions, and we hope to see you at our upcoming webinars. One question that came in from one of our attendees, is there a test by Google to become a certified Google Analytics user? So great question. There is an individual qualification exam. It's I think it's called the Google Analytics Individual Qualification, actually, and you can become certified as an individual by taking the free test. I think it's about 75 questions. You have 90 minutes to complete it. It has both high-level digital analytics types of questions as well as specifics about GA. Again, to start or to prepare for that, I'd recommend going to the Digital Analytics Academy courses by Justin Catroni, and I'm actually putting that in the chat pane now. I think that's a really, really valuable resource for learning about analytics and learning about GA, and that'll prepare you for the exam. But the exam is free, and you can take it as many times as you want. So if you take it once, I sometimes recommend this for different people, is take it once. Even if you don't pass it, you'll know the types of questions they ask, and you can take it again a little bit later after you study up and really learn. I find that exam being a little bit high level, but a really good way to practice and learn what you need to know as far as analytics goes. Another question came in. We want to start selling some products. How can we analyze from hard to reach places like China that don't accept Google? So that's a good question. From our experience, and maybe I need to, we can take this offline and talk a little bit further. We work with some of the global retailers or global companies, and they have websites based out of China, and Google Analytics is in fact still tracking or still allowed to be tracked on those Chinese websites even, since that is possible. That, I mean, we just use the same capabilities as Google Analytics. So really what I would recommend in general is starting with the basics. I mean, just getting Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and maybe e-commerce revenue tracked as a start, and then layering on the enhancements on top of that, I think is the best way to start to begin tracking. I need to know a little bit more. Google does have restrictions on what type of information is allowed to be tracked. There's no personal identifiable information allowed, meaning first names, last names, social security numbers, or specific home addresses of your users. Those cannot be tracked in Google Analytics because Google does not want to keep that personal information in their servers. But things like user ID or user city, user country, things like that, that's all possible to be tracked as well with Google Analytics, because you can't identify a single individual based on that information. We will be following up with an email on a link to the presentation and the recording in the next couple days. My marketing department will be sending that out. So just look out in your inbox for that information. Another question that came in: what is the best way to get digital reports generated for KPIs? The KPIs most important track for the business. Great question. Again, starting with understanding what your KPIs are, making sure you have those questions somewhere, either tracked in the Google site, Google spreadsheet, or somewhere, so you have those listed. As far as getting reports generated, I mean, depending on what you're trying to answer, you can either build custom reports. Well, first start with the standard reports in Google Analytics. See if any standard report or automatically generated report provides those types of answers to you. If not, just out of the box, create some segments and try to filter those standard reports first and save them as shortcuts. This is the process I would follow. If that still doesn't work, to really answer the questions that you have, either creating a custom report or custom dashboard, which you get to decide which dimensions and metrics you want. That might be the way to answer specific KPIs and questions that you might have. Our event next week in Dubai at Astralize will talk a little bit about custom reports and dashboards and how to leverage those. And then there's also another resource, which I will post in the chat. It's the Solutions Gallery by Google. And essentially, this is for Google Analytics. I'm just posting it in now. This is a forum or a portal for shared reports, segments, and other things that you can actually download, other assets from this portal onto your Google Analytics account. So it's things that other users across the world have shared that have been useful for various things. So you can, if you go to the Solutions Gallery, you can see there's options to select. I just want to see reports or dashboards for retail customers that I can download for Google Analytics. It's free to download any of those reports or dashboards as well. And essentially, it gives you, it's a quicker way to get to reports that were useful for other people using GA for your type of business. So it's a really powerful resource. Or just reach out to me, and I mean, we can talk about that offline as well as what types of reports specifically would be best for you. One question: which KPI would I track? It really depends on the business. Every business has slightly different KPIs, so I would have to say, I can't say right now which one I would particularly track, because it really depends on the different consumer site. Good question that just came in. What is the best practice to implement product impressions with enhanced e-commerce, with events or page views? It's a really good question. Unfortunately, I would say a little bit of both. And the reason I say that is because some impressions that are visible as the page loads within your screen, I would recommend tracking that with the page view. So the way it works is, say the screen is this big and only 9 products are shown, a 3x3 grid. I would send those 9 products with the page view initially to save on that, that additional hit. However, as a user scrolls, every scroll, let's say a user scrolls once and 6 more products are shown, I would suggest, or the only way to send that really is to send one event with 6 product impressions included in that event there. That's just the way we recommend implementing it. It's totally fine to send a page view with no product impressions and then immediately an event after with only the product impressions. Sometimes that's the only way to do it because the way the site loads, the page view might fire well before the product impressions are available. So instead of trying to delay Google Analytics, let it fire with no product impressions as a page view and then fire the event once the product impressions are available with those product impressions as a non-interaction event. And then again, as users scroll, send multiple events for every time new products are seen and the scroll stops. We actually have a blog post published by Google on how to implement scroll-based impression tracking. So happy to share that on after the webinar if you're interested in how to implement that, because it's very, very powerful and it's a much better way to implement impression tracking versus once on the page view for every product, even ones that users might not ever really see. So hopefully that answers your question there. Are there any other questions? For that specific question, Margaret, you feel free to just ping me directly to remind me, and I can give you some information about that via email or Skype. All right, I will stay on for maybe 2 more minutes. If anyone else has any other questions, I see there's people still in the webinar. So just again, post in the questions panel, or feel free to email me or Skype me later on and we can continue the conversation from there. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone joining. Thanks so much, and hopefully we see you at a future event or webinar.